Hi everyone, welcome to the Shack. So here's something that we thought might never happen. The 77th edition of the WRTH, World Radio and TV Handbook. Form factor, exactly the same. Aesthetically, very similar. Different publisher now. So obviously WRTH Publications in Summertown, Oxford, and now the Radio Data Center in Germany. It won't look out of place on the bookshelf next to your other copies. As you can see, it is a lot thicker. These books typically had about 670 pages, 672 pages for last year's edition. This year, 848. So I'm not sure exactly where all the additional information is coming in from. I suspect it's FM possibly, and DRM, which is, obviously radio data center responsible for the medium wave list and the FM list. But I guess someone else probably knows the answer to that. But yeah, there's a lot more information in it. So we've gone from basically going out of an existential threat to the new edition having even more information than the previous editions. And I've been collecting these now every year since 2015, and they've always had about sort of 670-ish pages. So a lot more information in it, and probably DRM, FM, etc. It's funny actually, because I've just realised that when you actually look at how this book's been put together, the WRTH, the H only just fits on the front cover. But I'm really happy. This is one of the very few remaining print publications that support the hobby of DXing. Some of you will know that Radio User Magazine has now merged with Practical Wireless. So although some of that content still remains, it's still effectively the loss of a single publication. So, and although expensive, I always recommend, and if you can afford to buy the WRTH, do it. Now, the reason that the previous publishers, because I met the guy in Summertown last year, the reason they decided to stop wasn't because it wasn't selling enough copies. It was because basically the contributors, who were all around the world, who were providing sort of local knowledge, were sort of getting old. Some of them were dying off, and they just felt they didn't have that kind of infrastructure for it to, I guess, really for it to be as accurate as it would have been. But the Radio Data Center have been sort of collecting broadcast data for decades, it's just great that they've taken over the publication and it lives on. And I think they've said that I think it says in the editorial that they're already working on next year's edition. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, here you go. So when you hold this book in your hands, the work on WRTH 2024 has already begun. So there you go. So anyway, as one other thing to say, actually, the format is basically the same. So once you actually get onto the data, so features and reviews, national radio, international radio, frequency list, television, national TV, and reference is exactly the same as we've been used to for all these past years. There's just more information. So what I'll do is I'm just going to quickly run through it, so as you guys know what to expect. So Eaton satellite, elite satellite radio advertisement on the back, part of a Eaton advert. I wish this radio had turned out to be what we all wanted it to be, which was basically just identical in performance to my original Eaton E1. But nice that Eaton, was supporting the book, and there's a few Eaton advertisements in this book. So let's go through it. The first global kids radio app Does that say Airy? Yeah, Airy, I suppose. Never heard of it, but nice. Listen to the World. So again, an Eaton advertisement featuring the Elite Satellite and the Elite Executive. This is as per normal. Another Eaton advertisement with the Elite 750. Another Eaton advertisement, so Elite Field and the Elite Traveller. So heavily features or heavily advertised, supported by Eaton advertisements. Editorial, so Gunther Lorenz and Oliver Schmidt. These are the two guys from the radio data centre who've taken over publication. We thank them greatly. And then a piece on the contributors. Lucas Gallone and Herman Wiantz. That's my best effort at pronouncing his surname. Yeah, and then a list of other contributors, some of whom I actually know. Then it's on to receiver reviews. So ELAD FDM S3. This is a receiver that I reviewed and wrote an article for Radio User magazine a while back. Really excellent. Not quite sure it's as good as the FDM Duo in terms of prices, performance as a function of price, but excellent receiver. Nice to see that there. The layout, how they do these is a bit different. They kind of seem to center justify everything and it's not quite so cluttered. I quite like this layout. The Stampful active dipole antenna review. Not an antenna that I'm familiar with, so an interesting read. The Reuter RDR52, which I am familiar with, and I've not really seen much information on it. And it's quite a detailed review. Although interestingly, it looks quite large here, but it's actually quite a small receiver. And there's not a lot in the box. But a detailed review. Obviously a receiver I am familiar with, the Belka DX. So nice to see that in here. That's quite a short review. Maybe that's because it's such a small receiver. Now, the HF receiver guide 2023, as we're used to on this side. So split into sort of handheld portables, budget radios, and then the more serious sort of semi-pro tabletop receivers, etc. And then an advertisement for Bonito for their active E-Field antennas, so Bonnie Whip, Meg Active, Gig Active, Mega Dipole, and the H-Field Mega Loop FX. Most of these I've used, so good to see Bonito in Germany, of course, supporting the publication, although I'm pretty sure they were in there last year as well. Great to see them. And then a feature on the broadcasting history of Andorra, which I haven't read yet, and a very detailed article. And then broadcasting in the Falklands. And then the history of broadcasting traffic information. So I'm guessing that's something to do with RDS. Yeah. Again, haven't read it yet, but there's a theme developing here, which is sort of historical radio developments in broadcasting and technology. Advertisement for online DAB, IPTV, DVB monitoring and measurement, Pro DBR. Nothing I'm familiar with, but good to see advertising support. RDS, the radio data system. So more on RDS. The AIRI advertisement I referred to when I started the review, piece about that. World of Radio for Children. UKW TV by I'm not even going to bother. So an FM TV study group. I did study German actually at school, but I was, as you can tell, absolutely rubbish at it. So an advertisement for an FM TV study group founded in 1976. I'm guessing, yeah. So the website is www.ukwtv.de, so it's German. And then an advert for, digital versions of former editions of the WRTH on DVD. So that's quite interesting. So you can buy digital copies of previous editions from 47 to 98. Oh, and here we go. All editions of the Shortwave News published by the DSWCI, who I am aware of, from 57 to 2016. So that's quite interesting. An article on mining DX data by someone at the Finnish DX Association, and then DRM, Digital Radio Mondial, shortwave broadcasting by the BBC World Service, a short article on that. So, quite a lot of stuff. I'll be honest, I was hoping and expecting more equipment reviews. And I'm pretty sure I picked that up somewhere online. So it just goes to show, don't believe everything that you hear online, but I was hoping for more equipment reviews. We basically got, I think it was 3 receiver reviews, and an active antenna. And then it's just a lot of articles on the history of broadcasting, which is in itself is interesting, but for me, I prefer a bit more on the hardware. Then we get on to HF broadcasting reception conditions expected during 2023. This is identical in format to what we've been used to previously. Suitable frequencies for 2023. So this is basically where you look at this matrix for where you are, what time approximately, and then depending on what band you're using, it will tell you basically whether what the listening conditions are going to be for a particular band or frequency. Exactly the same as the previous editions of the WRTH. And then a piece on how to use it, which is the same. And then another advert for radioreporter.org, a global radio community that inspires people to discover, enjoy and discuss all things radio. So nice. A couple of German language advertisements, which is good. Children's Radio Foundation, which I've never heard of, but anything that encourages kids to get into radio, obviously we'd all support that. And then the Radio Data Centre itself, the world's largest radio database for student and researchers. So an advertisement essentially advertising themselves. Then we come on to the maps with the sort of main transmitting sites. There's Belém for Radio Club de Paris, for example, 4885 kilohertz. These are similar but not identical to the maps in the previous editions. And then there's a world time zone map, so I wonder if I can. So here you go. So on the right is the map for last year. So pretty similar. Same thing, but not exactly the same. So they've generated their own maps. In fact, I think the quality of the maps in the 2022 edition is probably slightly better. So there's Australia. So I think these maps actually look slightly better quality 2022, but we won't hold it against them. And then world time zone map. World time table, which I think is the same as in previous editions. An advertisement for the fmlist.org. This is part of the Radio Data Centre's presence online. And then something on Radio Andorra and 42 years on the air, 1939 to 1981. 42 years off air to 2023. And then it's on to the main section, so which we're all familiar with. This is where there's lots of additional information. As I said, probably FM and DAB. That's where the Radio Data Centre, I think, are quite strong. I won't go through all of that because those of you who use this book will be familiar with it. What is interesting is that I always look at shortwave stations of the world. So this is basically the state of shortwave broadcasting. Last year, there were 17 pages of stations, 2022. This year, there's 14, I think. So again, you look at that and you think, well, the numbers have gone down, but I think they're using smaller fonts actually, so it might be quite meaningless. But as you can see, so starting at 2310 kilohertz, shortwave Australia, all the way through 60 meters, 120 meters, 90 meters, 60 meters, etc. There's still a lot on shortwave, and this is just the broadcast stuff, not all the other sort of military signals that you can hear, and channel markers, and volmets, all that kind of stuff. But there's still a lot on shortwave, and in volatile times as, such as we're living in now, I think radio has been more important now than it has been in many years. So plenty to listen to on shortwave, and then the rest of it, so all this kind of stuff is all pretty similar to the previous editions. So there you go. This is the WRTH 2023. We're really lucky, because I thought this thing was dead in the water at the end of last year, and I actually picked up this copy from the publisher from his offices in Summertown before Christmas, and I thought to myself, from what he's saying, this isn't going to be happening for much longer. So I'm really pleased that we've got this book still with us, and if the accuracy of the information in this book is the same or similar to these, it's still the Bible. This is still the place where you can go. You should be able to go and get an answer on a signal, identification, whatever, with no ambiguity. The WRTH is the one reference that I've always trusted. There's some excellent resources online, but sometimes the quality of the information isn't always there. That doesn't mean that I don't think they're useful. They are, but it was always the WRTH, which was kind of like the Bible for broadcasting and for what the sorts of things that I listen to, which is basically long wave, medium wave DX, and obviously shortwave. So very, very happy that this book is still with us and looking bigger and healthier than it has done in many, many years. So very pleased with that. And as I said, if you can afford it, buy this book, because if you keep buying this book, they'll keep producing it, and there isn't a lot of printed media left to support our great hobby. So I think it's just worthwhile, that you if you can afford it, just buy it. And then it just means that the chances of it surviving next year, the year after that, and maybe for a few more years, I think are just obviously must be enhanced if we all just buy this book. So there you go. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to sit down and flick through some of these articles now, it'll be on my desk next to my receivers, ready to use next time I'm listening to something that I'm not sure of the identification of. So that's what I use this book for. And WRTH, long may it continue. Thanks for watching. All the best. 73.